Alrighty, let's take a look at the Tecsee Sapphires. These are a tactile switch, so there is a small, tiny bump on the stem that should give your fingers a little bit of tactility to tell you when the key has been pressed, and I am failing to absolutely open these switches. So, a few things you need to know about this switch. I've only tried the Tecsee Carrots before this. I haven't tried any of the other ones. But I had a lot of issues with the housing materials for the Tecsee Carrots. Those were made of PME. I just lost my spring. Crap, spring down, spring down. Can you help me find it, Callie? Callie? Okay. Anyways, where was I? Oh yes, the Tecsee Carrots had a PME material for the bottom and top housings, and it kind of felt cheap. A lot like cheap plastic. These, however, do not. These are a beautiful actual sapphire, super glittery. I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're absolutely gorgeous. And they're polycarbonate, which makes them, in my opinion, a lot better, more durable at the very least. This bad boy right here is the interesting part. This spring, look at that. Like the middle parts, I almost lost it again. The middle parts are actually wide open, these normal, quote unquote normal, but there are compressed sections of the spring. I'm legit just gonna stop YouTubing at this very moment. How do we do that? There, okay. You can see the top, bottom, and middle are highly compressed, like literally touching each other compressed. And I'm really curious to see how this makes the switch feel, which I'll check out in just a second. I'll also do the sound test. Super interesting though, right? Here is the switch, which is apparently a, hang on, I got it written down, UHMWPE, which I don't know what that was. I had to go Google it, which apparently stands for Ultra High Molecular Weight Polyethylene. The more you know. Anyways, tactile bump looks solid on there. It's actually kind of weird. It's kind of like, looks like a flame shape on the stem for the tactile bump. It's 55G actuation force, a 63.5 gram bottom out, which should be interesting to test. I'm really just curious to see how these feel based on the spring. Son of a... I got it. Don't worry, YouTube family. You know what? Let's quit while we're ahead. This is the switch details. I think you've learned enough here. The cool part is the gold spring and the absolutely beautiful polycarbonate top and bottom housing. Now, let's do a sound test and see how they sound stock right out of the box, mostly unlubed, but again, they're supposed to be a tiny bit factory lube. I was gonna say they're not factory lubed at all, but actually there is a tiny bit on there, and if I move my switch, you can actually see a little bit rubbed off on my pad right here. Lube, that's what that is. So there is apparently a tiny bit of factory lube in there. So I guess I'm not gonna lube these bad boys. I usually don't like to lube my tactile or clicky switches anyways, just because I'm bad at the lubing process and I usually screw up the tactile bump. So I usually play it safe with a light bit of lube, but I think these are factory lube. So let's jump into the sound test now. And then after that, stick around and I'll give you my thoughts, Pete's thoughts, on how they sound and feel. I'm gonna lose this crap. All right, drum roll please. Pete's thoughts. Let's start off with the feel and then go into the sound. Feel is stiff and solid. And I don't mean solid like, oh, they feel good per se. I mean like literally solid, like a wood solid. They feel like wood in a good way. So the springs, I don't know if you could tell that they're like, you know, top, bottom, and middle or like highly compressed, but it does yield a very stiff feel, and they actually pop back up. They spring back up after the key press. A lot harder and faster than most other switches I've tried. It's not a bad thing. It's not a great thing. It's just a very distinct feel. They feel like wooden-like. Last thing on feel, I didn't lube these. I'm not gonna lube these, but I'll tell you right off the bat, the factory lubing is inconsistent. I could actually say that about 99% of switches that I think are factory lubed, but these are different. It did have a little bit on most of the switches, but it's fairly inconsistent and leads to a little bit of an inconsistent feel and sound. But that said, how do they sound? First of all, I will say that I like them. They are muted. I think these are some of the more like muted tactile switches I've ever typed on. They're not super loud. They're just loud enough to be pleasant, but they're actually kind of muted. And the one word I would use to describe them is, well, first of all, wooden. They feel wooden. They also sound a little bit wooden, especially I'm noticing that sounds like wood. But they feel crackly. Like a little snap, crackle, pop. Did you ever use... It's like putting milk in Rice Krispies. Crackly. Okay, not really milk and Rice Krispies, but they sound crackly. I don't know, I kind of like it. It's like a little, maybe it's like the inconsistency vibe that's like a little bit high-pitched here and there, a little bit lower-pitched and muted here and there, but they sound wooden, they sound muted, they sound crackly. Not necessarily like soft and buttery, but crackly. Like there's a little bit of sharpness in there. I like it. Let me wrap it up with my overall recommendation, the pros and cons. The biggest con is that these aren't super budget. They're not expensive premium switches, but they're not like super dirt cheap. The Tecsee carrots used to be a lot cheaper. Those are actually raised in price too, but I mean, it's a polycarbonate thing and they spent a lot of time on their design making the outer housing sparkly. That's one of my pros. They look amazing. In fact, these are probably one of my favorite switches to actually just look at. My 5-year-old daughter literally walked in here and she was like, oh, sparkly, Daddy, what are you doing? Tecsee Sapphires, baby, that's what I'm doing. Sound and feel, I think, is kind of neutral. Neither super pro nor super con. They sound muted and crackly. They feel like kind of stiff and firm and wooden-like. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just kind of unique and distinct. Should you buy them? If you liked the way they sound just now and you like a muted tactile switch, yeah, okay, I'd say they're probably worth the money. If they were like 40 cents a switch rather than like 50, 60 cents a switch, I would call them like almost bargain. Like, these are actually really good for that price range. But it's kind of like medium. Not in a bad way, not in a great way. They just are. Except for the design. I love the way they look. The rubies too. I'm gonna try those next. All right, KeebNews fans. Drop me a comment below this video and let me know what you thought of the Tecsee Sapphires. Let me know if they're pretty enough for you. See you next time. Go watch some of my other videos to help me out with the YouTube algorithm overlords, and we'll see you next time. Adios.